Clive Palmer, Palmer United Party and United Australia Party, Simeon Boykov, the Aussie Cossack, Andrew Bogart, Christopher Thorverfield, Jeff Taylor and Richard, Vinnie Eastwood, Billy T. Gay, Jordan Shanks Markovina, Friendly Geordie, Monica Smith and Reignite Democracy, Steve Dixon, Deno Badomir, Simon Evans, Reverend Simon Sideways, Gary Howard and Gas Cam, Renee Eves, Adam Radek, David Stills, David Weisinger, Senior Constable Alex Cooney and Cops for COVID Truth, Sergeant Crystal Mitchell, Rick Flory, Senator Gerard Rennick, Senator Alex Antic, Senator Malcolm Roberts, Craig Kelly, David on Ecclio, Dave on X, Rakshan Fernando, the real Rakshan, Rodney Rod Colleton and the Great Australian Party, Morgan C. Jonas, the MCJ Report, Avi Yemini, Ezra Levant and Rebel News, Maria Zarik, Maria Z and Z Media, Joe Jamal and the Ark, Barclay McCain and Turning Point Australia, Evelyn Ray, Jordan Crawley, Brendan Thompson, Matt Wong and Discernible, Brendan McKenna, Stu Peters and Stu Peters Show, Jeff O'Toole and We Are Change, Victor Tay and Exercising My Rights, Coach Joe, Joseph McKyle and Save the World Army, Carly Bold and Voice of Freedom, Dean Ryan and Real Deal Media, Peter Little, Graham Little Nate, Peter Pope, Graham Hood Hoodie, Danny Searle, Chris Coveries, Tammy Jane, Romeo Georges, Yusra Rose, Millions Rice, Saul Mullin, James Jim Crea, Doria Doris D. Osman, Anthony Burge, Marty Fogger, Lockie Kavanagh, Jim Penman and Jim Smowin, Fanas Bananides and 99% Unite, Rafael Fernandez and Keeping It Raff, David Graham, Ganga Guru Dave and Stop the Rod, Sack the Lot, Harrison McLean and Convoy to Canberra, Cafe Locked Out, Catherine Tilly and Tilly Roots and Camp Epic, John Wilson, Janea Markwell, Convoy Roller Girl, Yellow Vests, Andrew Bolt, Kiralee Smith, Isaac Butterfield, Mel Ann, Matt Lawson, Zev Freeman, Jamie McIntyre and Australian National Review and the McIntyre Report, Pete Evans, Sheena Alexandra, George Christensen, Andrew Cooper and Liberty Works, Daisy Cousins, Sydney Watson, Renee Alter Creedy, Jackie Dundee Miller, Serene Tafaha and Advocate Me, Max Egan, Richard Rowe, Dr. William Bay and the Queensland's People's Protest. You are some of the many prominent people that Arjay has helped over the years, behind the scenes or otherwise, consuming and spreading your content and messages to his platforms. He has given some of you a voice, or expanded it, promoted your fundraisers, your events, your merch sales, your groups, given you sensible, non-biased advice, tip-offs and suggestions, and Arjay has kept some of you out of trouble, that is, where his good advice was followed. Arjay has even donated his time and other resources to you, and even some of his money. That is on top of the charity fundraising, volunteering and donations that he's been doing ever since primary school. Whilst not always agreeing with everything you all say or do, Arjay has even gone out of his way to help you, becoming a target by putting his own reputation on the line to defend you against popular claims of you just feathering your own nests, grifting, scamming, being self-centered and selfish, or controlled opposition. Please show your followers that you are none of those bad things by your actions in response to this plea for help. Show your fans and critics by going out of your way to help us. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that Arjay says or does either. Arjay is now in trouble and nearly died twice in the past 15 months. He and his family need your help, love and support, and that of your supporters too, please. United we stand, together we are strong. I'll explain Arjay's story in more detail for the benefit of those watching that do not know much about him or that do not have the big picture. Please note that I have to say allegedly, as certain things have not had findings made by court and do not prejudice any potential future court cases if this goes viral. And with your help, it will go viral to hopefully bring about some kind of justice. And who am I? I'm Arjay's ex-spouse. We broke up around 6 years ago, so I can tell you first-hand knowledge about him, not by rumors, but my own experiences. I could talk about how he saved a woman from being raped, saved a mentally handicapped person from being beaten up on a bus by two criminals that had just gotten out of jail. The criminals went to bash the man that Arjay saved because he bothered them by merely saying a hello to them. The thugs then started heavily insulting the man, that his parents were brother and sister, that he's inbred, and claiming that the intellectually handicapped man does incest with his own mother, who was getting ready to attack him. Arjay stood up for the man and got bashed instead of that man. I could tell you how Arjay got a murderer jailed and a paedophile jailed too, or how for years we have chatted to and fed homeless people, buying them food out of our own money when we have had little ourselves. We don't whack out a camera to film it, nor get anyone else to either, which some online influencers do. I saw Arjay save a little girl named Nova from drowning on Australia Day 2021. The little girl had snuck away from her mother from a play park to go to swim at the beach. Arjay reached her as she was finally going under. Arjay repaid the universe as when he was a little boy himself, around 2 or 3 years old, he was saved from drowning after falling into a pool that he couldn't get out of. It was Arjay who suggested to PR Guy 17, Jeremy Hewitt Maluta, and Jordan Shanks for Jeremy to come out before Avi found out who he was and doxed him. Days later it happened. It was Arjay who told Peter Little about the Weather Modification Act, the Rainmaking Control Act, 1967, Victoria, that Arjay randomly found years before and Peter made popular. It was Arjay that discovered, besides the constitutional and human rights issues, that in Queensland, as an example, the COVID restrictions were never made valid, as they were never gazetted and tabled in Parliament, as per Sections 47 and 49 of the Statutory Instruments Act, 1992, Queensland. The COVID directions were not from the Parliamentary Council, but from the Chief Medical Officer, so it exempt subordinate legislation, so must be gazetted before it comes into law, has any power, or can be enforced. Similar provisions are elsewhere, like in Victoria. That is the so-called Arjay defense. If it wasn't gazetted, it is not law. All the fines and other penalties for it, Arjay says, is illegal. I could tell you about his time as a board member of a city council's community advisory board, or time as a board member and treasurer of a youth and community centre, or volunteering for years with organisations like St. John Ambulance, New South Wales Marine Rescue, and the Circle K Club, the University Division of Goannas. I could go on and on about this and that, but most people here don't have time for all of the ins and outs, and are more interested in Arjay's pandemic response stuff. I can add some more details in follow-up videos, depending on the response to this calls to arms for help. But for clarity, here is the summary. Arjay is a good person who doesn't discriminate against people's race, gender, sexual orientation, political views, or anything like that. He treats everyone well, unless they give him a good reason not to. Arjay lives the saying, usually attributed to French philosopher Voltaire, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. That is so long as it is honestly held, not unlawful and not defamatory. After completing a business degree, various TAFE qualifications, and a Juris Doctorate law degree, was working at the same time the COVID pandemic came. With that, the government locked down millions of dollars in fines, people jailed for trying to run their businesses, or even for going out for fresh air, to the beach, or for their sanity after solitary confinement. It turned out that the lockdowns and other restrictions didn't work. For example, study by an epidemiologist, Professor Israel, who compared lockdown and non-lockdown countries and found that it made no difference. There is a lot more that has since came up publicly. even by top government officials, from the real origin of the virus, unmask effectiveness, and UK Mad Hancock WhatsApp leaks, but in short, the country and world was shut down all for nothing. Arjay has been fighting against medical mandates publicly for years. He says, if you want a vaccine or you don't, great, the choice is yours. There are many people who cannot even get vaccines even if they want them, for medical safety reasons. If you are overly concerned about the non-vaccinated, remember that if the vaccines work and you are vaccinated, then the unvaccinated won't make you sick. Or, if the vaccines don't work well and can make you sick, then what gives some self-appointed people the right to force others to have them? The choice is only really fully informed consent if you are provided with the true information as to the risks, benefits and alternatives, and no unjust consequences for taking them or not. Coerced medicine is terrible, immoral, and it is supposed to be illegal. Arjay even studied medical law as an elective, as part of his law degree. Arjay has been fighting for fully informed consent publicly for many years, and for years longer privately. For example, you can see that for yourself if you look up old news articles from Arjay running in elections as an independent since 2010. The Newcastle Herald newspaper being the main one to cover Arjay for this, and for his advocating for lawful and constitutional government, cutting waste on government, consultants, etc. Often the consultants are doing the same job that they did when working for the public service, but getting paid 3 times more to do so, and a lot more. Arjay likes the phrase that Ronald Reagan made popular, trust but verify, so please check it out yourself. Try googling Arjay and stealth adapted viruses as an example of where he was fighting against the massive land rate rises in Lake Macquarie and Newcastle, or against people being banned by state and council governments from building on their own land as the sea level might rise in 100 years' time. Also behind the scenes, it was Arjay who informed the Australian Vaccination Risks Network of Section 51, subsection 23A of the Commonwealth Constitution 9 years ago via Tasha David. That was back when the AVN, as they are also known as, admitted to having raised more than $152,000 for a charitable purpose, which was supposed to be a High Court challenge to the no jab, no bail legislation. But that court case never happened. The money was not refunded, but I heard that funds went to such things as overseas trips to AVN bosses, for example to the USA, to visit and hang out with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Can they please confirm this? Why not ask your friends if that passes the pub test? After that, the AVN were banned from charitable fundraising by the New South Wales Parliament and the Office of Fair Trading for financial irregularities.
A prominent anti-vaccination group has been given 28 days to explain why it should be allowed to continue raising funds as a charity. The Australian Vaccination Network is being investigated by the New South Wales Office of Liquor, Gaming and Racing for potential breaches of charity fundraising laws. John Stewart reports.
We thought that it was a travesty that the AVN should hold a charity licence. They are not performing charitable activities, quite the opposite.
In his complaint, Ken McLeod accused the anti-vaccination group of misusing funds.
But the money was raised. Where did it go?
Today, the New South Wales Office of Liquor, Gaming and Racing said their audit of the AVN had detected a number of breaches of charity fundraising laws, including fundraising without an authority, unauthorised expenditure and failure to keep proper records of income and expenditure. Merrill Dury could not be contacted tonight. The Office of Liquor, Gaming and Racing said it had also identified possible breaches of the Charitable Trust Act, which will be referred to the Department of Justice and the Attorney-General. The AVN has been given 28 days to respond to the investigation. John Stewart, Late Line.
Australia's most prominent anti-vaccination group has been stripped of its charitable status. The Australian Vaccination Network will no longer be able to make public appeals for money after New South Wales authorities moved to restrict the organisation's fundraising ability.
Today, the New South Wales Office of Liquor, Gaming and Racing revoked the group's charitable status, stopping it from making public appeals for money. Merrill Dury says her group will continue regardless of the new fundraising limits. The AVN says it will keep going by using private donations.
They were also ordered by the government to change their name from misleading and deceptive conduct. Goodness me. Anyway, after the AVN did nothing with the knowledge and no civil conscription for medical-related purposes, Arjay informed the public directly of now infamous Section 5123A, particularly since April 2020. Only then did others take it up, like Nathan Buckley of G&B Lawyers, Serene the Faha of Advocate Me, and others, raising millions of dollars for court cases that never happened or that were never completed for whatever reasons. The AVN recently stated that they raised at least another $500,000 for the latest High Court vaccine mandate court challenge.
And I could only imagine how expensive this may be. Like the system doesn't make it hard for, I guess, for us to sort of take things to court. Like, you know, how do you, you know, we had the same thing with Monica. You know, she was thinking, she had the thought process of having to possibly raise a lot of money in order to go to court. So maybe tell us a little bit about, I guess, your thoughts on that.
Yes, well, we started a Give, Send, Go. We didn't go with GoFundMe because GoFundMe shuts down anyone who is active on this issue. But Give, Send, Go, I cannot say enough good things about them. They're an organization, a Christian fundraising site from the United States. And they told us that if someone tried to shut them down because they were raising funds for us, they would actually put on new servers to make sure that we were not shut down. And they were the ones who were raising the money for the Canadian truck drivers as well. And they did get shut down several times over that, but they held the line. And we cannot thank our members and our community enough, because we raised over $650,000 to put this case to court. And when we win our appeal, we will get a good deal of that back. And we have written we have said in our terms and conditions that at the end of the process, when we win our case, and I'm saying when we win it because I am counting on justice to actually be just, if there's any money left in the kitty, people who donated over $500 can get a pro rata refund of how much they gave.
Spent a little of it on federal court standing case and on suing Arjay, then divided the remaining money among themselves. If money was raised for the second AVN supposed High Court challenge, but was used to destroy the life of Arjay, without stating that that was the money it would be used for, then what do you think about that? Arjay has given his all to try to prevent coerced medicine and other tyranny for many years, so are you happy if your donations have been used against him without your fully informed consent? If they say that they were raising money to destroy Arjay's life and therefore that of his children and of me, and if you donated for that purpose, then that is different, isn't it? Will they refund you easily if you ask for or demand your money back? Please let us know in the comments. Meryl Dory said that the excess donations would be divided among those who donated $5,000 or more. Have the bosses of the AVN spent a tiny portion of that $500,000 on some court costs, including against Arjay, and made sure that they each donated $5,000 themselves, knowing that they would divide the massive profit of tax-free donations among themselves? Where is the transparency? And if they were banned from fundraising in 2014, how could they legally raise any money, let alone more than $500,000? How much more than $500,000 was it? Am I missing something? Wasn't Dave Onyx and Dottie Jensen just charged with converting monies? Is there grounds for the AVN directors, called committee members, to be charged? Or the People's Revolution's donations that some people who claim to know claim the donations went into property development for Tristan Van Rij, e.g. renovations. There were some interesting claims made on Facebook, as an example, by Wayne Jean, who claims that he was collecting the money for the People's Revolution, TPR. There's a screenshot that I might be able to find where Tristan Van Rij was allegedly asking for donations to hire botanical gardens, pay for cleaning up after events, etc., when he allegedly did not hire them at all, nor pay the cleaners, and so on. Has he been charged for alleged fraud or not? Or are there no grounds to charge him? Also, getting back to the AVN, if a condition of the New South Wales Fair Trading Registration Incorporated Association status is that they are banned from political activity, then how can the committee members be involved as political candidates with IMOP or the TPR political group, e.g. Alona Lan and Tristan Van Rye? That status has basically no transparency, especially compared to reporting requirements and audits under the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, also known as ASIC's National Register. The AVN, as New South Wales Incorporated Association, do not even have to disclose on the public registry who their directors or committee members, as they are called in this case, are, only their secretary. So people have to rely on self-identification by the committee members themselves. Do you know who all of the committee members are, or the office holders are, and do you know who they have been over the time? Who of the committee members, whomever they are fit or not fit to hold such offices of public trust? Or even to manage donations, your membership fees, and more? These are legitimate questions that I think we should get answered, don't you? Please also note that Tristan Van Rye is the public face to the People's Revolution, TPR. TPR uses Communist Party imagery of the raised fist and even the name of the People's Revolution. There were disturbing claims made by some people, such as TPR enforcer or TPR guardian, Luke Taylor, in his interview with Gary Howard of Gascam. These claims have been echoed by others too, and include that the People's Revolution was building an army called the Guardians, and that they were trying to get batons and other weapons manufactured, including 3D printing. It has also been claimed that Tristan, or Tricky Tritty as he calls himself, allegedly put cash bounties out for the Guardians to bash Tristan's enemies, such as police, council workers, fertilizing the park before rallies, etc.
This is Luke. Luke is an ex-Guardian, ex-TPR Guardian.
I put myself out to get involved with this movement because I believed in truth. First and foremost, vaccine was probably a far distant second, but it was always about truth, being lied to by our government. I made sure I put my arm around Tricky so Bosie knew exactly who I was with and where it was coming from, and I think that's kind of stirred a bit of pot later on in the night. But look, I want to make it clear, and I think I've made it clear to you, I've made it clear to anyone, this is, for me, is not a character assassination.
No.
This is a character assessment on the people that I actually thought was a friend.
You thought this was a freedom movement, right? Not a dictatorship.
I think he thought it was a freedom movement. For me, I always believed it was a truth movement. And the truth got lost a long time ago. It got muddied. For me, I believe the waters got muddied when he started feathering his nest and selling this commune pipeline, this pipe dream of a commune that never took off. And
it actually had a lot of resources fed into it initially and failed under his, by his own admission.
Under his own admission, yeah, that's correct. Yep. So then, isn't that the definition of what they say, crazy? If it failed, why are we trying again and doing the same thing? And I just believe the reason why it failed is because the leadership is rotten, which brings me to another thing that I think we agreed that we'll do a part 2 on and talk about later, is who is the leadership of this group? Because it's not Tricky, I can tell you that now for a fact. There's but we'll get to that at a later date.
Yeah, there's definitely people handling things from behind the scenes, that's for sure. But I think it's a truth movement, but I also think we are fighting for freedom. We don't need dictators to, tell us how to live and what to do. But apparently this is a freedom movement that if you want to have a rally for a different cause, even if it's on the same day, it's something you've got to ask permission for. It's also a movement that claims to be for this mystical thing called unity, right? But it's only unity if you fall under the banner and actually toe the line to a select few, one of them being Tristan.
If you want to donate, do your thing, donate.
Feel free.
100%, but be aware of who you're donating to, and where that money is going. Yeah, let's talk about the truth. That's all we're talking about here. This is not innuendo here. We got facts. This is my lived experience. You ask, I came to talk about my experience. I didn't come here for any other reason. So this is my experience. This is my truth. This is facts. This is what I lived. This is what I experienced in the last 2 years in the movement with TPR. So have your own opinion about it, but I got facts. You just
most people are just trying to get us to shut up.
Yeah, so. That's right. I mean, I don't know how to shut up, mate. I've got ADD. I talk in my sleep. You know, one thing I think we were talking about earlier is, you know, if I gave $10,000 to TPR, well, where does that go? I asked myself this question, so I started poking and prodding a little bit. I saw that, yep, TPR got an ABN. He's registered as a sole trader. Now, anyone can go check that out for yourselves. It's easy, look it up. Sole trader. ABN, not registered for GST. And the reason why this pisses me off is the money. We're getting back to where we were, is that money is so hard to come by as it is at the moment, right? So when you're making more money than most people are making with 2 incomes in their home, 100,000 is the average, I think they say, and Tricky's on roughly 140, 150. What gives you the right to ask for money?
One day at the park, we arrived to set up for a rally, and there was something written on a cubicle up the top there saying that Tricky had a small...
I can't vouch for that, guys. I just want to say. I'm a guardian.
So he got rather upset about that. So what was the reaction to that? What did he want you guys as guardians to do, and what was he willing to pay to have it done?
Yeah, so obviously I come under tremendous flack from the guys in the guardianship and, you know, for this, but, you know, my belief is beyond my loyalty to that bullshit. My belief is, like I said, truth. And I was a part of this stuff. You guys got to remember, you know, I was willing to perpetrate some of this stuff. I'm not going to say that I'm squeaky clean, because I was a part of, you know, I'm not going to say I was anywhere near brainwashed, but I was a part, you know, I was willing to participate.
I was brainwashed.
Yeah, probably more so than me. I'm gonna be honest.
I have a smaller brain.
But Tricky knows that I wasn't, because I told him from day dot I won't get involved with this shit if it's going to be the way that it is. But anyway, so look, we had a meeting at Tricky's house, and we went down the back, and we all left our phones up the front so people couldn't record stuff. And but it went on into the night, and yeah, essentially, you know, we were talking about paying money to bash any of these anti-protesters that we came across, you know.
So that was you and the team of guardians were...
Yeah, you know what, I don't want to call out any of the guardians personally, because I'm telling you now, there's a lot of good dudes in there, and I'll tell you,
they are.
One of my favourites is Rico and Steven.
Bloody beautiful.
They're great
guys,
dudes,
mate.
you know. Good and there's a lot of shit that happens behind the scenes and in the back of these protests that these guys took care of in a very civil manner. I got nothing bad to say about any of those guys whatsoever. No. They're great. Yep. You know, so yeah, there was a monetary value there, $400. Actually, this one happened on a Zoom conference. Tricky's probably recorded it. $400 to pay people to take care of any protesters and hang around. So we hung around the park of a night time, make sure there wasn't a repeat of, you know, what they did when they put manure in the ground and stuff like that last time. You know, at the time I was angry, and I was down with it. I was like, yep, sweet. I didn't get involved in it, but I did do a lap that night, drove out off my own free will and just see if I could come and find anybody or whatever. We didn't, thank God. But yeah, but the anti-protesters, the Extinction Rebellion mob, you know, we only assumed that it was them. We didn't know, but yeah, they were putting Tricky's got a small dick up everywhere around West End.
If we're going to have this community, this other new way of doing things, you know, even if they're coming out against us like that, that's not how we treat them. We shouldn't have so-called leaders thinking this way.
When government does it, it's called tyranny. When Tricky does it, it's called bullying. But you know, when you've got a management team now, and you're looking at moving into politics, I mean,
yeah, you know, he is.
That's tyranny as well, man.
You know, he said this was a system that wouldn't actually work, but he has actually designs to do it himself, you know, so...
100%. And you know, then why can we talk to Clive Palmer but we can't talk to William Bay? You know, so White William hasn't got enough money.
No, I think it comes down to that Tricky perhaps is feeling a bit insecure about his spot.
And he should.
Yeah.
He should, because at some point this was always going to end. And I feel like right now he's like a crocodile in a shallow pond, swinging around, biting at anyone that's trying to... He's got this famine attitude where he doesn't believe that there's enough for everybody. There's not a seat at the table for everybody. So he's just cutting everybody off, you know, and I don't appreciate that, man. We were talking about this a bit earlier about, you know, we all pushed for informed consent, you know, from workplaces, from all these, you know, informed consent to know what's inside these vaccines and stuff. But what Gaz and I want is informed consent on the groups of people that we're supporting. So I know there's other people behind him, and I want to know who that is. What do you say? You know, so all I can say is for now, for this episode, we just want some truth. We want some transparency. And that comes from everyone.
And Marie, that was a statement that came out from Tricky, who pointed out that he's only a trainee doctor, as to diminish anything that he actually has to say and any credibility that Dr. Bay has. You know, it's quite spiteful, if you read between the lines of all the stuff that Tricky writes.
It was horrible. It hurt my feelings, and I'm not even Dr. Bay. I thought it was disgusting when I read that.
And apparently it's all in the name of unity.
I'm just tired of seeing these bullshit things put out on Telegram, just bullying people, telling you what you can and can't say. Anyway, keep by the ready, because we're going to come back and do a part 2. We've got enough for probably about 3 or 4 parts, you know, because we're going to start bringing out the evidence of our claims. So, you know, we've claim, proof, evidence. That's what we're here to do. And then you go and do whatever you want with that. You know, you go, you know, we're not telling you to not follow anyone. We're just saying, guys, just be careful. Zelda asked where we were in the beginning. I was here in the beginning. You go and have a look through any of the videos, mate. I was there, standing next to Tricky, and we woke up, and now we're here, the beginning of a new day.
You know, we've got to do this. You know, you can either shy away from the truth and the bad behaviour at your own peril. You know, because this is not a very good base to actually start a community on. You know, we're still in the infancy at the moment. You know, if we don't get to evolve, and in the process of evolving this community, do some housekeeping and get rid of some of the bad players that are probably misdirecting and being less than honest, you know.
Have you noticed a bit of a common thing here with what we went through the last 2.5 years? Everything was fed to us through fear. You know, wear your mask, you're going to kill someone's grandma. The same thing is happening to us within this freedom movement, right? You know, they're coming for us, it's going to be a generational war. But I haven't heard anyone talk about hope and solutions other than Gaz and legit people that actually care about hope and solutions.
I want to put, just you brought that up, you know, the mantra of Mr. Tristan is that, you know, we're going to be at this for a long time. This is going to be a multi-generational war, and before we get any remedy, what that remedy is, he's never really told us, you know.
Yeah. Well, what do you want us to do? You want us to just let this go and not say anything about it? You know, I don't know what you want, but we're just...
If that's what you want, I for one, I can't do it.
The truth sets us free, Lama Mama. That's right, 100%. I feel free for telling it. I was really anxious about the backlash for coming out here. I even said to Gaz, don't tag me in this video. I don't want to, you know. But it's a weight lifted. So, and like I said, guys, we're not here to assassinate anyone. We're just here to assess character, not assassinate it. That's what we see. That's my lived experience so far. There's more to come, and we're not making up anything. So
I wish I didn't have to talk about this crap.
Yeah, you know, I could think of a million different things I'd be doing on a Wednesday night.
Because honestly, you know, I personally, I feel kind of heartbroken about this whole thing, because I thought the promise of this community was something that we could actually garner a victory out of and have an alternate life that we could actually, you know, still exist in some way, shape or form.
and Tristan allegedly said that Arjay would be taken care of if he was seen at any protests or rallies. Maybe I can find a screenshot for you. Has Tristan been charged for any of that? If not, why not? Or again, is there no grounds for charges for that? A trivia question for you. What is it called when violence is used for political purposes? Was Tristan's army to be called the People's Liberation Army? You know, like in many communist countries around the world. If people are communist or not isn't the point. Many of the TPR masses are not aware of these communist links and claim to be anti-communist, but have apparently been tricked to secretly be communist or facilitating communism in Australia. It is so secret that they themselves do not even know, which is ironic. Tristan and Roy, Tricky Tritty, was also a committee member of AVN. Alona Lan was the boss of Queensland IMOP. IMOP candidate many times and was a committee member of the AVN EDC. IMOP was formed after the AVN tried finding a political party to work within, was rejected publicly and embarrassed by Fiona Patten's Australian Sex Party, later renamed to Reason. This was by an open letter in response to the offer of members for policy control, or however you want to call it, which hit national news headlines. The AVN people made IMOP somehow, when they appeared to be banned by law, with their New South Wales Office of Fair Trading incorporated association status and their own charter. Again, how? Maybe the New South Wales Office of Fair Trading can answer that if one of you calls them. Please let us know their reply in the comments. Thank you. Now a little bit more about Arjay. As most of you know, if not all of you watching, Arjay was the first COVID restriction protester in Australia on the 6th and 7th of April 2020. Arjay called on people all over the world to protest, and many heeded his call, including people who were or became social media influencers themselves, thankfully repeating messages of freedom from tyranny. Unfortunately, Arjay missed out on the achievement of being the first public COVID response or restriction protester in the world by 1.5 days, the first being in Germany on 4th April 2020, but that's fine. Germany is 10 hours behind though, hence 1.5 days, not 2. Because of Arjay, Australia is the second country in the world to have public protests concerning COVID, as far as we can tell. Encouraged by the Vietnam War moratoriums, Yellow Vests protest, and even Greta Thunberg's climate strike, Arjay called for an ongoing worldwide rally for freedom, World Strike and World Freedom Day, and other variants, calling for people of the world to get together and protest against the draconian measures. It is nice to give credit where credit is due. Arjay suggested to people that if they were too worried about protesting openly for fear of the government's retribution, that they could protest whilst doing things like essential shopping or whilst exercising. The so-called lawful excuses for being outside of one's residence. Arjay suggested things like putting one's thoughts as slogans on a shirt when exercising, shopping or traveling between essential activities, signs in the window, turning to social media, or more openly like he did, and continued to do so. Days later, protests started in the US, with Michigan kicking things off. About a week or two later, Exercising My Rights was formed and started using Arjay's exercise protest method, complete with slogans on shirts. Arjay put out information that the lockdowns were illegal, inoperable, unconstitutional, and for Queensland as an example, the COVID directions were not even gazetted or tabled in Parliament, so had not taken effect, i.e. have no power, and could not be enforced, as per sections 47 and 49 of the Statutory Instrument Act. The government knows this, and in every state and territory, as well as federally, Arjay informed them with his COVID court cases. Remembering too that Arjay had one of several different types of Doctor of Law qualifications, a Juris Doctorate that literally translates to Doctor of Law. Arjay is honest, transparent, provides reliable information, is selfless. Therefore his information is credible. After weeks of protesting on the Gold Coast and Brisbane around Speaker's Corner at Parliament and from King George Square marching to Parliament, Arjay encouraged people to protest on Anzac Day 2020 with the story of one of his great uncles, a teenage child warrior who died on Anzac in World War I after lying about his age to allow him to enlist. Weeks after that, Arjay had the first Australia-wide COVID restriction protests held in the state and territory capital cities. Some were attended by more people than others, but the efforts of all are appreciated. This also included the first lot that got lots of publicity, Mother's Day 10th of May 2020. These nationwide protests could not have been done without help from great local organisers in each area, so thank you yet again everyone for helping Arjay and Reset Parliament. A Reset Parliament was the political party that we were setting up that would essentially be a party of independence, with candidates that would do the right thing by the people, but not bound to toe the party line. Instead, they would represent their constituents. After nearly 2 months of protesting, Arjay had the first large-scale COVID protest in Australia on 30th of May 2020. This was 2 days after Arjay was involved in Australia's first COVID court case, which received massive publicity and pissed off a lot of people, compelling them to go out and protest 2 days later, as protests were banned for the next day. They went to Arjay's other protests that were advertised for around 6 weeks before, depending on which city. Arjay is happy to work with others, share the limelight and join forces for the greater good of freedom. Arjay had his pre-planned nationwide protest merge with other groups that are supposedly for similar goals of pro-freedom, where those others decided to protest on the same days and approx the same times and locations. Please remember that Arjay's protests were advertised for many weeks before. He got authorizations where required, did videos explaining protesting rights and obligations in various states. You can watch these other videos yourself. Please subscribe to find them. This included in Sydney, despite an abusive and mental phone call from someone Arjay called a friend, on Michael Sims' behalf. This regarded the Sydney protests, and it started with the woman screaming down the phone, which was answered on loudspeaker. She abused Arjay along the lines of, "What the hell are you doing? I just spoke with Michael Sims." He said the people he knows say that they were going to your protest, not his Millions March one, followed by false accusations of Arjay trying to split the freedom movement and being a stooge. Arjay advertised that particular set of Australia-wide protest about 6 weeks beforehand, with lots of planning and his own resources. Despite that abuse, Arjay had his Sydney protest have a slight change of times and location to merge with the Millions March Against Mandatory Vaccination protest, the MMA-MV in Sydney. He advertised and got his leadership team in Sydney to make the changes. Let's not forget that Michael Sims, or as he calls himself with his rap name, Microphobic, is one of the AVN and IMOB too, and even ran as IMOB candidate. What about elsewhere for that same day on 30th May 2020? Protests were held in all capitals, but I'll focus on Brisbane where Arjay's authorised protest was taken over by the AVN, TPR, IMOB and their coalition partner Civil Liberties No Toss Party. The Civil Liberties No Toss Party, who were working with IMOB, making a deal allegedly to not run against each other, to not split each other's votes, and they once announced Anna Stankom as their candidate for the state seat of Morayfield. Jeffrey Hodges, boss of that party, is buddies with Anna Stankom. Stankom is best friends with Alona Lan, as Stankom stated in restraining order court proceedings. This taking over of Arjay's Reset Parliament protests was despite Arjay assisting them with information and for organising their own protest for 2 weeks before. Remember too that Arjay turned down being an IMOB candidate for the 2019 federal election and running that election which he was already campaigning for years, not despite them but doing what he was going to do all along, to give them mute voices in the media that follows the elections to show good people that they aren't alone. This meant that Alona Lan and IMOB and Arjay, who was endorsed by the Great Australian Party, ran against each other. The Brisbane protest realistically had maybe 1,800 to 2,500 attendees. It was so big since Arjay was in Queensland, so it was easier for him to organise it directly. The massive publicity from the court case 2 days before hitting national news, Arjay do interviews on TV and on the radio, and that Arjay arranged behind the scenes some 30 different groups to have protest at the same time and place as Arjay's Reset Parliament official authorised protest. Please note that some people falsely claimed that there were about 10,000 plus attendees, or even 15 or 20,000, and some media falsely claimed that only hundreds attended. There are many people who exaggerate in either direction to manipulate everyone, or maybe they just cannot count. However, the truth matters. In some other places, Arjay had his national protests merge with other groups to simplify matters and help the so-called freedom movement for liberty. Other places like Darwin only had Reset Parliament protesters, although that one was very small. Of course, people are free to choose their own affiliations, and no one owns the protesters, but context matters. For example, in Melbourne, our Reset Parliament protests merged with Fanos Bananidis, Craig Cole, and Rafael Fernandez. We are the 99% protests. Arjay was a volunteer admin team member of the 99% group pages too, as a moderator, so again helping behind the scenes. He was later told that others were being paid, but Arjay did it out the goodness of his heart for free. Arjay also rallied people to others' protests. For example, the Dave Wonex for Victorians rally on the Gold Coast. And another example is the Save the Brumbies protest that had one person in it until Arjay and a friend asked if they could add to it after police scared people off from attending his Service Paradise protests. Arjay interviewed the lady about the issue of wild horses to be systematically killed by the government. And Arjay also spread others' protests, or what became of Arjay's protests after they were co-opted by TPR, IMOB and the AVN, via live streaming them to tens of thousands of viewers who wouldn't otherwise know about them, or not otherwise hear what the speakers and the Vox Pops interviews had to say, whether one agrees with the views or not. Going back to the first COVID court case, on 28th of May 2020, the Queensland Police Service illegally banned Arjay from holding political rallies against the COVID restrictions and for his political campaign for the Queensland state election. The first Service Paradise protest was supposed to be held on 29th of May 2020, also supporting Arjay, who was running in the election for the seat of Service Paradise. Arjay doing the right thing to protect attendees, even was requesting COVID restriction exemptions for weeks, put forward a COVID safe plan etc. The exemption applications were a normal process, with hundreds processed per day by the Office of the Chief Medical Officer, who was Dr. Janet Young at the time. She's now the Governor of Queensland, King Charles's representative for Queensland. Dr. Young refused to deal with Arjay's COVID restriction exemption requests, despite it being escalated maybe half a dozen times for urgent response, with no decision either way, making it that it could not be put before a tribunal merits review. It was also Dr. Young who created the COVID restrictions that were being protested, a conflict of interest. Other parts of that court case include alleged perjury by the police prosecutor Sergeant Mayi Arundel, who falsely claimed that they had the legally required mediation session with Arjay for the court to even have jurisdiction for protest matters, as per the Peaceful Assembly Act 1992, Queensland. How can prosecutors be allowed to commit alleged perjury? They are supposed to be there to get to the truth in a free and fair manner. According to Anna Stangholm, in restraining order proceedings, her and Sergeant Arundel had what appears to be illegal dealings to the detriment of Arjay. Anyway, Arjay listened to the wrong set of lawyers for free legal procedure advice and tried appealing to the District Court, then the Supreme Court's Court of Appeal. Arjay and I and our children have been victimized by the police since, with the police allowing bad people to do crimes against each of us without any consequence. For example, Arjay being allegedly unlawfully arrested and imprisoned by the police multiple times, and him being physically assaulted 5 times, twice being by the police themselves. One of the alleged physical assaults by police was due to false accusations at an event which was wholly filmed and shows Arjay is 100% innocent. At Roma Street, Parklands, where Arjay was peacefully serving defendants with court filings for the defamation, breach of contract, and tort of a civil conspiracy court case. And the incident of the police allegedly physically assaulting and falsely arresting Arjay is for him supposedly annoying the police by him reporting a crime that the council directed him to do. That was with his, my and our children's property illegally destroyed, then dumped on council property. The police ignoring and even refusing to take reports of the property stolen and destroyed and death threats by a murderer who we unfortunately lived with in share accommodation, despite the evidence given to them, our car being stolen by someone who stated that they would steal it in text messages, severe unlawful stalking against us by multiple people talked about in this video, verified perjury and verified false allegations against Arjay, and much more. Arjay alleges that his protest was taken over by people who have been severely bullying him, our children and I, threatening him, our children and I with death threats, attacking him by physically assaulting him multiple times and otherwise, and defaming him since he turned down the political party, by Arjay politely declining to be their candidate. This includes audio-visual evidence confirming these things had been provided to the police and attempted to be submitted, but the police refusing it. The political party is IMOP, or the Informed Medical Options Party. That IMOP is also intertwined with other groups, the AVN and TPR, as I talked about before. A few examples are alleged. Anna Stankom getting him arrested about 3 or 4 times via terrible false accusations. Arjay proved his innocence in court with video showing all interactions. It showed Stankom's alleged perjury too, and the false claims only needed to be shown to the civil standard of proof, as it was for restraining order applications. Stankom ignored Arjay's successful restraining order application, filed before Stankom's vexatious ones. The police don't care, nor care where the murderer we lived with, although didn't know that when we moved in ignored our restraining orders against him. Stankom and Tristan Van Rij allegedly inciting people to attack Arjay at the Roma Street Parklands via false accusations on a PA system, when the reality is that Arjay was just serving legal filings against some people. IMOP, AVN, TPR associates uploading a picture of Arjay sitting and chatting to our children when he was live stream broadcasting a protest, yet again making louder the voices of those on stage and attending the event with Arjay's Vox Pop style street interviews. IMOP, AVN, TPR associated people openly stated online along the lines of that they would use that picture of Arjay filming the stage when looking to one of our daughters that was talking to him, to take that photo to the police to falsely claim that he was approaching and filming young children in the park. This was allegedly in order to get his electronic devices seized by the police to prevent him from running against them at the election, and any other elections with the publicity that would follow, and thus preventing him from splitting what they claim is their party's votes. That is just a few of many alleged disgusting things that they have done to Arjay, our children and I. People's votes do not belong to anyone, besides to each individual voter. There have been many other false claims as well, which I won't get into here. By the way, Arjay has been publicly doing the Vox Pop interviews, including protest-related street interviews, since at least as early as 2015. He does so in a fair and frank manner, covering both sides of the debate. For example, you can look up the 2015 Reclaim Australia rally and Counter rally. He was also frequently appearing on ABC's Q&A since around 2009 until around 2013. What are some alleged motivations for these alleged crimes and torts against Arjay, our children and I? For those that don't know, in Australia we have electoral funding, that is taxpayer money going to candidates and political parties as tax-free money, which only kicks in after a certain percentage of first preference formal votes are received. For example, 4% of federal elections, 6% for Queensland state elections. That electoral funding and that it can be nearly $6 per vote, depending on the election, plus additional party policy development funding on top, plus the return of electoral deposits, which can be up to $2,000 per candidate, maybe more now with inflation, being returned only when that quota is reached. Unfortunately, that free money is an incentive for unethical political parties to attack their competition unfairly, especially ones with overlapping policies, as opposed to their supposed enemies. That is to avoid vote splitting like what happened with Alona Lan with IMOP and Ricardo Bossi of Australia 1. They both missed out on electoral funding, with each getting just under the required 6% of the vote in 2020's Queensland state election. Many of you may remember the Liberal Party attacking One Nation when that party came out in 1990s, when former Liberal candidate Pauline Hanson was disendorsed and made her own party. One Nation could be described as sort of like 1950s Liberal and Labour parties combined. Senator Pauline Hanson was even thrown in jail, then got out on an appeal over supposedly calling members of her Friends of Pauline group party members. Again, election funding and vote splitting, which also, besides reducing electoral funding for the coalition, risked Labour getting in, depending on preference flows. Hence, they destroyed her, including with later Prime Minister Tony Abbott setting up a slush fund to prosecute Senator Hanson, the so-called Australians for honest politics. For federal elections, the quota is 4%, and Arjay was lead Senate candidate for the Great Australian Party, as he likes that they focus on constitutional government and individual freedoms. Arjay was already running into election anyway, knowing that he could not win, and spending his own money and the few little donations that came in to enable suppressed voices to be heard. So much for free and fair elections and representative parliament and all that. Not many people can afford that or afford to lose their deposit, let alone expenses of running a campaign. And they certainly aren't fair. Arjay has run in various elections to help the silent speak, despite it costing him many tens of thousands of dollars. After all, he was an election poster for about 5 or 6 years. Anyway, back to Australia's first COVID court case series. Arjay set up a GoFundMe for funds for dealing with court proceedings beyond that original hearing, seeking funds for legal advice and representation to help the Australian public. Arjay pointed out all along that due to his studies, he is good in substantive law, but not procedural law. Feel free to re-watch his videos at the time to see for yourself. Arjay pointed out that procedural law is taught later with practical legal training, supervised legal practice being an apprenticeship, and supervised courtroom experience, hence the requirement for the legal team despite his degree. Unfortunately, people associated with IMOP made GoFundMe shut down his fundraising campaign many times, falsely accusing him of fraud and boasting about it online. Due to shutdowns, Arjay only raised about $3,500 net of GoFundMe fees, for what ended up costing something like $80,000 in legal costs against him due to the technicality that no matter how bad a decision is in Queensland court, if it involves protesting, then it cannot be appealed. Please fix that parliament. Please ask your local member to change the law to reflect real justice. Plus, Arjay had his own expenses on top of that. Filing fees, printing, travel, car parking, opportunity cost, and so on. The court couldn't hear his substantive arguments due to jurisdiction issues. Arjay listened to the wrong free legal advice from the wrong lawyers when given 2 conflicting pieces of advice when he did not have money to engage a legal team. As it was free service, they are responsible for negligence, etc. The court did point out that had it been filed as a new case instead of an appeal, then it may have been a very different outcome. Speeding things up, Arjay then sought to enforce our rights to not be defamed, harassed and bullied, etc. With the police ignoring the law, such as criminal defamation, Arjay pursued it in the civil courts. The problem was that we ran out of money, with Arjay alleging that the IMOP, AV and TPR people, with Alona Lan and Grant Matthews, obtained judgment by fraud, by falsely claiming that he had removed certain pages of the legal documents, including default notice statements, before Arjay sought default judgments. Arjay said that Justice Bradley relied on those false claims to award indemnity costs against Arjay. With Arjay trying to point out the truth of the matter, including having video evidence showing the truth, Justice Bradley got angrier and angrier, then awarded super costs called indemnity costs against him. The IMOP, AV and TBR people claimed that a simple application cost some $40,000, which is about how much each of Crown Law and Queensland Police Service legal costs were for appeals in the District Court and in the Supreme Court's Court of Appeal were. Arjay also alleges massively inflated and fabricated costs, and costs being claimed for things that they were denied costs for by Justice Brown in the previous application etc. Just think of all the hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations of your hard-earned money between the IMOP TBR fundraising on top of the $500,000 raised by the AVN, much of which went into bankrupting Arjay, Australia's #1 advocate against COVID restrictions and against any other unjust curtailments of freedom. And apparently without disclosing to you that was where the funding would go. Arjay had to cash out all of his remaining superannuation for engaging a law firm to fix things up, who Arjay alleges ripped him off, not doing the work that they were paid to do. Arjay alleges that they did that, besides being allegedly immoral and illegal, due to them apparently thinking, well, he's going to be bankrupted anyway, unless we do our job. It's better for us getting the money for not doing anything, rather than the other side. He has no money left and lawyers are very reluctant to sue other lawyers, so let's take his money and run. Arjay helps people, may we please help him back? Besides nearly dying twice in the past 15 months, Arjay is suffering his life destroyed. This also affects our kids. And me too. Besides what I've already talked about, Arjay has helped many people in their goals, whether it be fundraising for them, free business and coaching advice, or via empowering people through increased audience, and even for many other things that I can talk about in update videos if need be. So where things stand, after the worst kind of disgusting bullying, defamation etc., which he has suffered for nearly 4 years now, Arjay has suffered a lot, from long-term homelessness to suffering 2 lots of catastrophic lifelong injuries. I cannot go into all of the details, but will point out some of the physical side of things, so you can see the seriousness. This includes multiple broken bones, shredded cartilage, torn ligaments and muscles, spinal damage and more. That is just part of it, and the physical injuries are just part of total injuries. There is a good reason why he disappeared from making videos since early July last year. Arjay will never be the same again. He is also now bankrupt from fighting injustice. He is without stable accommodation. My own and our children's accommodation is unstable as well. Our belongings were destroyed and stolen and allowed to be by police inaction, even despite restraining orders to prevent it, with the police refusing to do anything to help Arjay or those closely around him. The police even dropped the assault charges that they laid against Anna Stangholm last minute for her allegedly breaking into a car, assaulting Arjay, smashing his phone and stealing a friend's phone. They wouldn't even charge Stangholm for unlawful entry in the vehicle to commit indictable offence, a very serious crime despite it all being filmed and multiple eyewitnesses. So how can he help to fight this injustice? What I would love you to do is to help in any way that you can. Number 1, please like and share this fundraising video and the GoFundMe campaign everywhere. This is to increase the reach of this message. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel so hopefully it can get monetized with ads. Please find the link in description. If you go to gofundme.com and type in Save Arjay or hashtag Save Arjay, it will come up hopefully. But I'll put the link in the description too. Number 2, if you are an influencer, please make a donation to help us and help Arjay, who has given his all literally, to helping others including you, your family and for your freedom. Number 3, please ask that your followers, friends, family and fans please do the same. Number 4, Please ask your followers that don't already follow Arjay's and my socials to please do so, that we can keep people updated and continue to help others where we can. We have YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey and Twitter. I'll put the links in the description. Number 5, please send some words of encouragement to Arjay to cheer him up. A quick message or even a short video with a link to this fundraiser and a hashtag #SaveArjay. Number 6, consider boosting this message on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or TikTok. Number 7, please donate. If you genuinely cannot help financially, then please do your best to spread the message around. Number 8, if you are religious or spiritual, please pray for us and please send us positive vibes. Number 9, please send this to your favorite influencers and see if they help the OG or founding father of Australian COVID restriction protesting and of Australian COVID court cases and more. As the Bible says about destiny, people are false prophets. You shall know them by their fruit, Matthew chapter 7, verses 15-20. Or put another way, you can know a tree from the fruit which it bears, or you can judge a person by their actions or deeds. Number 10, if you see people trash talking and defaming Arjay, who is in reality a hero, then please screenshot the posts including URLs and profiles of those posting such garbage. Then please email the screenshot and links to the Arjay Martins for Australian page on Facebook. Number 11, you could purchase some of my merchandise to help me and the children out too. Link is in description. And number 12, also please let me know if you can think of some other ways to help us. Look, Friendly Jordy's Jordan Shanks raised $1 million, Monica Smith raised $300,000, and Arjay is in a worse position than both of them, as are his children and I. Unfortunately, Arjay may never be able to work again. Neither Jordan or Monica have children to worry about, but we do. Good on them for doing their good deeds, yet please also help us with our good deeds, and unfortunately many ongoing problems. We have been wiped out, our lives destroyed. What do you think that Arjay's sacrifice for us all is worth? Or mine, or our 2 little girls? Should our children continue to have to grow up in poverty? So please, dig deep, please help us rebuild, and please help now, rather than putting things off. Thank you kindly, from me, Arjay, and our children. You may wonder what might the funds be used for. Depending on how much money is raised, the things would include a stable accommodation for all of us, separately or in the one place, a cheap vehicle for Arjay to live in, or that he can drive around in if he's ever medically cleared to drive again. Debts are paid off, property replacement, some toys and other resources for the children to replace what was destroyed, transport costs, normal food, medication, medical treatment and surgery were not otherwise covered, or too long on the public health waiting list, paying legal costs, unbankrupting Arjay etc., and anything else that would help. Thank you so much for your time, your help and donations, and many blessings on those of you who help us. Even though we have not been together since the start of 2017, we are still friends. He's a great dad, and Arjay is a great person. He has helped me time and again. It's time to repay the favor. He needs my help and your help, so please, let's get stuck into it. #SaveArjay. Thank you. Please also note that nothing said here is defamatory. All allegations are reasonably held and all are allegations. This information is also in the public interest. Invariably, some people will try to shut this down with false claims as they have done previously. UK Prime Minister Sir Edmund Burke was credited with saying, "All that is needed for evil to triumph over good is for the good to do nothing. Please don't let evil win." Thank you so much everyone for your help. We couldn't do this without you. I would like to give all of you a hug. Hope you share the video and hope you have a good night, and thank you so much again. Bye!